with bulimia, people are so out of control. They just need to be pointed in the right direction. And so that's probably why you did so well with bodybuilding.
Yeah, I think you completely nailed it there. Yeah, that the difference between the anorexia and the bulimia, because yeah, like you said, with the bulimia, it's like there's so much loss of control. You're just like, oh my God, how am I ever going to find my way back from this thing? And then, oh wow, now I have this literally step-by-step guide. My coach told me this is what I eat at this time and weighing everything out, and you're just loving that, right? It's just like feeding it's feeding your crazy brain.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. Welcome back to another edition of RX Muscle Spotlight. Today's bodybuilder we'll be spotlighting is IFBB Pro, 4th place finisher at the IFBB Toronto Super Show, RobinStrand. Welcome to the show. What a great story you have.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited. And to be honest, I'm a little bit nervous because I've looked up to you for so long now, and I can finally get the chance to meet you. It's awesome. So
it's all good. And I like to celebrate people that have achieved some great or overcome obstacles and achieved some greatness in the sport. You have a good story. You kind of came from, not from exactly the same place, but from a similar place that I did, where you were really thin at one point, and then you kind of like went the other direction. Everyone has their origin story, as I like to say. What possessed you to, number one, get involved with bodybuilding? Because there's always like a precipitating event that kind of pushes you in that direction.
Yeah. So what actually got me started was a series of traumatic events. I think they're traumatic now because it's something that I've actually struggled with for a long time and not really realizing that these were actually traumatic events in my life. So the first thing that happened was I was friends with a group of kids in high school when I was 16. We went out and we started, getting into drinking a little bit. That night, I realized that there was just no possible way I could drink. I was allergic to alcohol. And I realized that because I had ended up puking all over my friend's bed and just having a horrible time. They were super embarrassed, and they decided to basically never hang out with me ever again or invite me out again. And, they started bullying me a little bit at school, and I didn't understand really why this was happening. And over time, I developed an eating disorder, bulimia. And during that time, just kind of figuring out, okay, this is, kind of how nutrition is, but not really understanding. So I would basically avoid kind of anything that was, in my mind, unhealthy. So what I would do is
let me stop you for a minute, because I think that a lot of people might relate this. When you say bulimia, first of all, for people who don't know what bulimia is, most people do, but it's eating food and then feeling full and sticking your fingers down your throat, basically, and throwing up the food, purging the food. Usually that's not like a typical eating disorder of like for men. Like men like to eat, you know what I mean? So I had asked you off camera when we first started if you were overweight, and you really weren't overweight as a kid. What made you feel like you had to throw the food up?
I think it was because of the bullying, because like you said, it's not common for men. And during that time, I did like eating. So when I was friends with those people, with those guys, right, we would always hang out at one of my friend's house, and his parents would just stock the fridge and stock the cupboards with all kinds of goodies. And every time we were over there, they'd be ordering us pizzas, and we'd be eating like, all kinds of bread with butter and candies and chocolates, and basically anything that you would want as a kid, we had access to. And so I was eating that stuff on a regular basis. And I think in my mind, I started seeing which of the kids who ate like that got fat and which of the kids that kind of didn't get fat. And I started kind of relating that to my nutritional instinct, I suppose. So I loved eating that stuff, but I started realizing and feeling uncomfortable with the fact that I was almost like getting skinny fat, if you will.
So would you eat the junk food and then throw it up? Is that what it was? And then if you ate good food, you would throw it up?
at that time, before I really got bullied, I would just eat the junk food and just
Oh,
enjoy it. But then something clicked in my mind that, I started to really avoid that stuff, almost the fear of getting fat from eating, right? I think that's where it
yeah,
stems from.
yeah.
So I love that food. And so what I would do is when I would go to school, I would try to avoid eating almost anything all day. So I would get my $5, to get lunch from my mom, but I would only spend $1 and I would get like a veggie tray and I would just eat celery and carrots and until I got home, because then when I knew I got home, then I could eat whatever I wanted. So I could have dinner with my parents. Then I could go into the cupboard, eat whatever. And then I'd be in my comfort, safe space. So then what I would do is I would go and I would take a long shower, I'd puke it up, and then I would go down to the
Wow.
school again and I would run on the track for 2 hours just to make sure that there was nothing left. And
You've seen
I
that
was,
new show on, I think it's on Apple TV. It's called The Physical.
yeah,
You've seen it?
I haven't seen it yet. No,
Oh
but
yeah,
I know what you're talking
yeah. It's about this girl. She's like it takes place in the 80s when the aerobics was big, aerobics classes, and she had this whole ritual. She would go to like one of these burger places, buy everything there, and she'd rent the hotel room and she'd go and gorge herself on everything. Then she'd go into the shower, she'd puke, and then she'd go take a shower, get dressed, and then she'd leave the hotel room.
about. Oh my God, I gotta
The
watch
whole
that.
rituals. Yeah.
That's exactly how it was. And I was disgusted with myself because of that, knowing that this is not a normal thing, and
Right.
not really having any friends, but realizing that if I did have friends, they wouldn't be doing this. They would just be hanging out like normal kids after school. But that's what I
Where'd you
did,
grow
and I
up?
did that for a while.
What city did you grow up in?
I grew up in a really small town north of Toronto. It's about
Okay.
an hour and a half north. It's called Sutton, Ontario. It's right
Yeah.
on Lake Simcoe.
Gotcha. See, if you threw up in someone's house if you lived in America, that you would be like the cool kid. In Canada, you throw up in someone's bed, you got bullied, after that.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, we can't hang out with him anymore. He can't handle
Yeah.
his liquor. I'm like, oh shit. So
Have you ever had a drink since then?
I have, but you know what happens is because I'm allergic, I just totally get like blotchy everywhere and I feel sick to my
Oh,
stomach. So
so you
it's
really
it's
are
not good.
allergic then. You really are allergic.
Absolutely. Yeah. And my
Yeah.
mother is too. I mean, she doesn't drink at all either. So
Wow.
I think some
Crazy.
people just lack the enzyme or something like that. But
Yeah, that is pretty weird. All right, so you got bullied, you became bulimic. How'd you break out of this whole mess?
So that's when I started getting into bodybuilding, really. And the person that introduced this to me during the time I was working at a Wimpy's Diner, which if you guys don't know, it's just a breakfast spot. It's a franchise. There's a bunch of them, but the owner of the Wimpy's was a bodybuilder. Him and his brother were both bodybuilders. And so one day, I think they probably saw that, hey, this kid, there's something wrong with him because he's like 130 pounds, and we offer him food, he doesn't really eat it, so that's kind of strange. And one day, Dave, he brings me aside, he brings me into his office. I noticed in his office it was full of pre-workouts, and he had this book on his office desk. He said, "Listen, I want you to take this book." It was the Arnold Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding, of course, and he said, "I want you to read this, and I want you to let me know what you think." So I brought it home and I read it from cover to cover. And right away, I was just, completely enamored with the bodybuilders and how they looked. And I started reading about the training and the nutrition. So I went back to him the next day and said, listen, Dave, his name was Dave. I said, I need to be like this. I need you to help me get like this. So what he did was, he said, all right, I've got this home gym. I'm moving, I'm downsizing. I'm going to bring you this gym. You pay me $200, I'll take it off your paycheck, whatever. Set it up in my bedroom. There was basically, it was just my bedroom and all this weight equipment, and there was no
Right.
room left for my bed frame. So while my parents were at work, I got rid of my bed frame. I put my bed actually literally in the squat rack. And when my mom came home, she's like, what is going on here? And I said, listen, I need this. I need to do this because now that I understand that there's a goal for me to now take control of my life through proper nutrition and building up my confidence through bodybuilding, this is what I'm going to do. And she said, that's fine. Just make sure you don't put any holes in the floor. And so I started training 6 a.m. every single morning. I'd wake up, I'd move my bed to the squat rack, I'd take some pre-workout and I'd hit my squats. And I started eating the same diet that was in the Encyclopedia of Bodybuilding before I started looking online on the forums, bodybuilding.com, and putting together my nutritional program, which then brought me comfort and power. And basically it eased my anxiety again about eating, but it didn't end my bulimia because I still struggled with eating anything that was considered unhealthy. I would only eat food that was, in my mind, clean. And that's the whole clean versus unclean debate.
Right.
But that's how I got started in bodybuilding, really. And then my first competition was about 8 months to 12 months later when I moved down to Toronto for university. I had a friend that I met there, and he had signed up for a regional show here in Canada. And he said, "Hey, listen, there's a $500 grand prize for all the class winners." I said, "All right, let's do it." So I signed up for that 12 weeks out, started prepping for it. I hired a coach. He took me under his wing. He even brought me over to his condo to work on posing every week,
Right.
and ended up winning that. And finally feeling that this is something that I'm good at. This is something that I feel empowered by, and I feel the confidence, and I love that feeling and that rush of getting on stage and being called out for first place. And I knew that this is something I want to do basically for the rest of my life.
Right. But it's for people with eating disorders a lot of times, and you don't have to be like a 12 or 12 or 14 or 16-year-old girl to have an eating disorder. Anyone can have an eating disorder. And for someone like that, bodybuilding is so structured, and it's so like, do this, get this result. I think that it's very empowering for a lot of people with eating disorders. I work with a lot of I've coached a lot of people with eating disorders, and bodybuilding has cured a lot of these people because it gives them, in other words, most people with eating disorders, they're very regimented. They just don't know how to they don't know what to do. So they do all the wrong things because they start getting into their own head and doing, destructional things, that are, not going to help their bodies. It's going to make it worse because they just don't know. But once you give them the rule book, so to speak, and they're good at following the rule book, and once they see results, those people will get amazing results because they'll never deviate once they see, the results that they do get. And so I find that, with people with eating disorders, more so with bulimia than sometimes anorexia is tough to crack because they're such control freaks that they don't want to turn over control. But with bulimia, people are so out of control. They just need to be pointed in the right direction. And so that's probably why you did so well with bodybuilding.
Yeah, I think you completely nailed it there. Yeah, that the difference between the anorexia and the bulimia, because like you said, with the bulimia, it's like there's so much loss of control. You're just like, oh my God, how am I ever going to find my way back from this thing? And then, oh wow, now I have this literally step-by-step guide. My coach told me this is what I eat at this time and weighing everything out, and you're just loving that, right? It's just like feeding it's feeding your crazy brain.
I was like that. I mean, I was a runner. I didn't know. I was overdoing it tremendously, never resting, running too much, eating too little. But because there was no one who could tell you what to do. There were no coaches back when I was doing it. And especially for running, my coach didn't know anything. He just was like, he knew how to crack the whip on us, but that was it. With bodybuilding, it's really controlled fury, if you think about it, right? I mean, you have to know when to go all out and when to pull back, and you got to take days off. There really is a methodology to it, and if you master that methodology, you can get really good results. I don't know how much muscle you probably gained the first 5 years, but I imagine it was probably a lot, right?
Yeah, it definitely was. Even in those first couple of years, I really saw the changes in my body, and that was very motivating for me, for sure. And even what you said there about having that with over exercising, that's also a form of an eating disorder, kind of like bulimia. It's kind of related, and you see that all the time, even with bodybuilders. If you're not quite disciplined 100%, let's say you're like, oh, I've had a mess up on a cheat meal, well, I'll just make up for it by doing an extra 2 hours of cardio. That's also, that's an addiction too, because it feeds that cycle, right?
100%. Yeah, I mean, people use cardio to purge.
Yes.
Rather than throw it up, they just figure I'll exercise it off. But what happens. You always it builds your hunger up so much that you wind up overeating more than you can ever exercise off. So you wind up gaining weight anyway, and then you just wind up being completely wrecked because you're so overtrained.
Right, and you're creating that guilt, shame, vicious cycle again, and you're also feeding the habit of potentially doing that more and more in the future.
Of course. That's why I always tell people if you do have an eating disorder and you feel like you don't have control, hire a coach who's knowledgeable too, who's worked with people with eating disorders. Like I said, I have a lot of people that contact me that, and obviously you have probably experienced it now that you went through it yourself, because I understand the mentality, and you know what, once you structure these people, they do really well. So how do all right, so you come out of the whole anorexia thing, I mean the whole bulimia thing, and you start, bodybuilding, you're getting some success in the junior league in Canada there. At what point do you say, you know what, I could think I could be a pro in this? Because, most people will tell you, don't waste your time, don't give up your day job, that kind of thing. What inside you said, hey, you know what, I want to do this for a living,
Well, from that first feeling of winning, I think that's kind of what hooked me in, because I tried so many sports leading up into this whole bodybuilding thing. The only thing that I really attached to before this was paintball. I wanted to be a professional paintballer, and I got to semi-pro paintball before having all of my equipment stolen on me. So I guess that's just the universe's way of saying this wasn't the right direction for you. But everything from
people make money playing paintball.
Quite a bit of money actually, but it's kind of like bodybuilding, because it's such a extreme kind of niche sport that it's really only maybe the top 10 teams that are making something good, right?
How do they get paid though? Who's putting up the money for this?
It's sponsors. It would be sponsors, and it would be like tournament paychecks as well. So it's very similar to bodybuilding in that regard. Yeah,
that's funny. I didn't even know that there was. I guess you can get sponsors because they sell the paintball guns and all the paintball stuff that the average people will probably purchase. That's crazy. How'd you get involved in paintball?
Actually, the place where I grew up, Sutton, this small town, they actually had a paintball field that was like 5 to 10 minutes away. And that group of friends that I had partied with that one night, we actually formed a paintball team prior to that, and we would go there and we'd play every weekend with the hopes of competing like on the pro paintball stage one day. So that was an interesting kind of backstory for me, but that was like kind of my first love in extreme sports, something that I thought that I would take all the way, but it didn't work out that way, and it definitely happened for a reason. Because also one of the things about paintball, why it kind of led in a little bit into the bulimia thing, is that, like you were saying, the smaller you are and the lighter you are, it's actually more conducive to paintball because you can hide behind bunkers much easier. You're a smaller target and you're faster. So we wouldn't eat very much, but then we would, after the tournaments, we would gorge on stuff because we'd be starving.
So that probably didn't help your eating disorder right there, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's kind of like where like that junk food thing started in the beginning. So
let me ask you this question. So you get to that level where you're, going to turn pro, and you have to make a decision, I'm sure, at that point. Now you also are currently, you went to college, you have a degree in kinesiology, you're doing kind of physical therapy. Was this kind of at the same time that you were going for your pro card?
When I was getting ready for my pro card, that is actually about when I started switching over. So when I got my pro card, it was actually I dropped out of college thinking that would be the thing to do. So I was 2 years into college, and I decided, seeing a lot of my rivals at the time, other people in Canada getting their pro cards and things like that at a young age, seeing them drop out of university and college, thinking, okay, that's what I got to do to give it 100%. I got to drop out. And so after 2 years of university, I dropped out and I focused on getting my pro card. But the thing was, I realized that I actually thrived with a balance. So when I was just fully doing bodybuilding, I kind of fell off the rails a little bit because I wasn't always stimulating my mind. It was just training, physical, eat, sleep, bodybuilding. So I got myself back into college after getting my pro card, realizing that this is actually something that keeps me motivated in a different way, because I'm constantly learning, and I can apply that learning to what I want to do in the long run, which was to, also coach people and help people get to their goals too.
That's pretty cool, because a lot of people, wouldn't go back. It's hard to go back. People don't realize when you stop, it's easy once you're in school and you just keep going. Once you stop, to actually go back again, after taking a break is not easy. You have to really be very, very disciplined to do that. And was it tough going back, or did you feel like, now I want to be here and I'm doing better because of that?
It honestly was tough. Like you said, going back, it was it was tough because I was now in a different class than the people that I started with. So I was kind of behind, and I was 2 years older than everybody else.
Right.
I was a professional bodybuilder, so I stuck out right away, kind of being an outcast. But yeah, but in a class of kinesiology, people look to me for answers sometimes, and I did try to engage with the professors as much as possible, and I did actually work a lot harder than I did in my previous 2 years of university.
Yeah.
So my third and fourth year, I was very actively involved. I was staying at the university almost all the time, just training there, bringing all my food. And I really enjoyed that lifestyle for a while because, again, it's like I could find that balance again that I was missing for the past 2 years. And even though it was challenging, it was extremely rewarding, and I'm really glad that I did that.
Now, did they think you were freaks? Like, I mean, the students, because obviously you were probably the biggest guy there by far, I'm sure, and you probably were like off season while you're doing this. People must have thought like there's something wrong with this guy, right?
Everybody's just fascinated about the food, because you
Yeah.
bring your, it's like, oh, you got your fridge today, and it's that kind of stuff. Everybody's just eating their sandwiches and stuff, and you got
Right.
3 meals, 4 meals, 5 meals there with you. So, but it was cool because I even had a professor who had invited me in to do like a professional athletic talk to one of his classes, and so there was like more opportunities, I guess, that opened for me because of that. So it was really cool.
Right. Interesting. Yeah, that's cool. All right, you're a pro now. Everyone thinks, hey, I got my pro card, I made it. But that's not the case, because once you get the pro card, now you have to compete against all the guys that beat you already, in the amateur ranks. What was it like making that transition from an amateur? And when did you turn pro? What year was that?
I turned pro in 2018.
Okay, so you took some time off, obviously went back to school.
Yeah.
When at what point did you say, hey, you know what, I'm ready to compete as a pro and maybe win some shows here?
To be honest, I did my pro debut 2019 at the New York Pro, and I was thinking that I was ready to get like a top 5 placing. I just was going in there guns blazing, and so that's what I had in my mind. I'm going to get top 5. I ended up getting 10th place, and I was extremely disappointed with that because I had kind of set the bar so high for myself. Following that up with the Toronto Pro, I ended up with a 7th place, which again I didn't make the top 5. So I realized at that time there was still a lot more work to be done. And it's a different feeling because you're going from being the best, the top of the amateur, you're the best there, and then now you're starting at the bottom again. You're essentially the worst, and you got to work your way back up. So I definitely had some delusions, I guess you could say, of how fast I would climb the ranks. But I understood that pretty quickly. I was humbled, and I'm very fortunate to have actually gotten the placings that I did because I ended up beating a lot of guys who have been, in the sport longer than me, veterans, and that gave me the confidence to continue going as a pro. I realized that the first couple times I got on stage as a pro, I did not peak the way I wanted to. I did not bring the look I wanted to. I was overly anxious on stage, and I made a lot of mistakes along the way. During that time, also, Dave, I was still struggling with bulimia. So this
Really?
is interesting.
Oh wow!
Yes, sir. And my last binge was actually 2020. So during COVID, I still did a binge, and I still did a purge, and I still struggled even throughout being a pro. And just like you said, you think, okay, as soon as I turn pro, things are going to change for me. I'm going to be this great new person because I'm a pro now. And guess what? The day after the show, I binged and I purged because there was this extreme high, and it was this amazing feeling. I had 100 people lined up with, Robin, congratulations. And then the next day, it's like I'm sitting home alone, and I'm like, well, I bought all this junk food, so I just started eating, and before you know it, I'm too full to go to sleep, and then the cycle starts again. I realized, I was like, holy F, how did I end up here again? Right. And it kind of scares you a little bit. It kind of wakes you up to think, like, this isn't something that you just get over. This is something that now it lives within you for almost ever. And I have to be careful nowadays, right? I have to be careful that if I get to that point where if I overeat and I start thinking, oh, I want to go back to those old ways, just like an addiction, you can quit, a drug, but as soon as it's there again, hey, do you want to try this? Bam, there's that addiction back again. So yeah, so even after those first couple pro shows, even between that New York Pro, the 10th place, going into the Toronto Pro, that 2019, between
Right.
2 weeks between, I had a binge and a purge 3 days out. And I felt
Crazy.
so guilty and so ashamed and so bad for myself, but I had to pull it together and get on stage and show my best, right? So it's just
Yeah.
part of it.
Are you like one of these people that's like really good at it? Can you just almost induce it without sticking your finger down your throat?
No, it's super uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think because your body almost builds up a tolerance to it. It's like you really have to force it. So I'm there like, oh my God, what am I doing? But I gotta get it out. And that's when it's like, that they talk about, you doing shadow work and the darkest depths of hell and things like that. It's like when you're alone
Right.
and you're bent over the toilet and you're retching,
Right.
but nothing's coming out, but then you do it again
Right.
and again. Oh God, that's when you really think
Yeah.
about what you want, who you want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
be.
You know what? I a couple times I ate so much food because I have an ability. I used to have a crazy ability to consume huge amounts of food. Sometimes you eat just so much that you can't even walk. I mean, you can't
You
move. You
can't
can't
even
sit
breathe.
down. You're so uncomfortable. And I literally wanted to try to make myself throw up. But in my head, I said, if I throw this up, I might be losing muscle. And I said,
Yeah,
that's unacceptable. And so I would go walk it off or whatever. And I would just stop myself from doing it. So if you want a little Dave Palumbo technique, next time you feel the urge to throw up, say, I could be losing muscle. This could be this could be that little extra meal that pushes me over and helps me gain that extra pound that I've been trying to do for the last 2 weeks. So I can't let it
exactly.
go. And when you do that, as your bodybuilding brain, as I like to say, kicks in, and now you'll stop that bad behavior right there and then. So
That's so true, and that's actually something that I would tell myself. Funny enough, like once I had that last binge in 2020, I was like,
yeah,
listen, all I'm doing is hurting myself by
yeah,
by binging this stuff out. All I'm doing is wasting money, wasting food, wasting gains. I'm stressing my body more,
right.
and yeah, like there's that
You
dichotomy
know
within
why?
your brain, right?
Because at this level that you're at, if your body knows what it needs. So
Yes,
if you're craving that food, whether it be junk food or not, your body needs it. Whereas when you're like in high school and you're throwing up because you got bullied in school, that's a psychological problem. But when
yeah,
you binge now, it's because your body says we need more calories, we need more food. You just starved us on a diet for 16 weeks. Feed me. And you know what? If you throw this up, I'm gonna send out even bigger hunger signals tomorrow, and you're gonna eat even more than this. So you might as well just keep this food down. That's how you have to.
exactly.
That's how you have to think.
Exactly. And you know what's interesting now, Dave, is that with all the stress that I placed on my body, it might have been a contributing factor to the fact that I now have colitis. And
Oh, I didn't know
so
you did. Wow. Yeah.
so leading into these shows, the New York Pro and the Toronto Pro, at 7 weeks out, 3 weeks out, and then leading all the way into the show and the day of the show, I was dealing with colitis flare-ups. And
Wow.
we're talking 20 times plus a day, blood and diarrhea, and it was super scary. I didn't know if I was going to make it to the stage. I didn't know
Right.
if I was going to be able to bring my best. I just really held on to the hope and I had faith that this was going to be my year to bring my best finally. And somehow, some way, it did come together. But now, because you mentioned that, it's like, my weight it's almost the exact. Actually, you know what? I'm a little bit less than I was even on stage now. I'm 2 pounds down. I'm monitoring my weight every day because now with the colitis, I'm reporting to my coach constantly about, okay, are we actually able to gain a little bit of weight back? Because like you said, your body is so it's craving, after a long diet, it's
Yeah.
craving to get back to kind of homeostasis, and it's
Yeah.
been tricky to do that. I can't eat any junk food, so even after the show, I went out to get some sushi, couldn't do it. It was just my body didn't
Yes.
want it.
Hold on. I'm gonna give you a little psychoanalysis now.
Yeah,
Subconsciously, your body is purging itself the other way now.
yeah,
So you've stopped doing it, through your mouth. So you've created so much stress in your body about the fact that you're not doing it through your mouth anymore. It's coming out the other end now, and I think that's really, I guarantee you, the brain is so powerful, and the brain can do kooky, crazy things to the physical body. And I would not doubt if that's what's happening. I bet if you talked it out with someone you should talk to Leslie, our staff psycho analyst we have on. We got to get you on a show for iron therapy because you'd be great.
I would love that. I need some
But
iron therapy.
Leslie's right there in Canada. You should talk to her. I mean, she's helped a lot of people I've sent to her. But I bet you that a lot of that is psychological. I don't think it's physical. I think it's a psychological manifestation.
You know what? I'm so happy that you said that, because I've been looking more into colitis, and at this point, I'm doing everything I possibly can from a physical standpoint to make this thing better. And I've been doing that the whole time. I mean, obviously, when you're on a contest prep, you're eating cleaner than clean. You're eating better than you could eat any other time of the year, and still this is happening. So you're right. This is like a psychosomatic deep trauma thing. Like all of these things we were talking about, it led to this. Right. And my body and my subconscious knows. So I'll definitely talk to Leslie about that. But I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people don't understand that these types of GI issues they're almost spiritual in a way, right? Like you were saying.
100%. And you know what really works well for that? I don't know if you have tried it, but there's my wife, I'm giving her all the credit for this because this is her remedy. But Standard Process is a company that makes a product called Boswellia Complex. They sell it on Amazon.com. Okay. And you got to only use this brand. The other Boswellias are not as pure, I think. Boswellia Complex, you take 2 pills like 2 to 3 times a day. And I'm telling you, if you get a flare up, in a couple days, it'll be gone. It's awesome. Incredible, this stuff. It's all natural. You don't have to worry about like the side effects of some of these other prescription drugs that they prescribe for colitis. You'll thank me. I'm telling you, it's really good. Standard Process Boswellia Complex. So
okay, I'll check that out, and I appreciate that.
I'm learning. Let's talk. This is fun. I like all the science and all this type of stuff and psychological stuff. But I want to get to the show because I mean, 4th place, at Toronto, top 5. You got what you've been trying to get. You look great. As a matter of fact, when I looked at the pictures and I was talking to Chris Aceto about it on Heavy Muscle Radio, I was like, wow, Robin really brought a really good look. This is the best I had ever seen you. You were bigger, you were harder. What clicked here, aside from the fact that you had colitis the whole diet? What do you think clicked here and made you so good?
You know what? This contest prep was the most that I've ever worked on my mindset, because I was dealing with these inner issues and I didn't want to let them defeat me. I was doing 3 times a day breath work. I was doing once a day of visualization hypnosis. I was doing 3 times a day also meditation sessions. I was spending a lot of time also just giving out my time and my positive energy to other people, which I've never done during other contest preps, because I always thought that if I just conserved my energy and kept to myself and took more time off and just stayed home, that I would just somehow be better because I'd have more energy for myself. This time I decided to go out of my way. When I was having hard days on prep, I would actively seek out other people at the gym who looked like they needed help. And I would just say, hey, listen, can I help you with this thing? Or I would just try to give them some positive energy. And I really realized quickly that the more that I did that, the more energy that I had for myself. So as my calories went down, I had less food energy. I was somehow getting this spiritual energy, if you will, by giving out my positive energy to other people. And I felt more positive than I ever had, despite what was going on. And I just felt like that was one of the things that was completely a game changer for me. And then doing the inner work, I was journaling, I was meditating, I was visualizing, I was spending more time doing things like just drawing or just writing or just reading or just doing stuff that I would normally not do on a regular day-to-day basis when we're, focused on the computer and the phone and all that kind of stuff. So spending more time, I would go out and I would lay on the grass and I would smell the dirt and I would do all this crazy stuff that I was posting on social media. People were like, what is this guy doing? I'm like, I'm trying to heal myself. I'm trying to level myself up. And then the other thing too was that I worked with a coach, Dorian Hamilton, and I followed his program to a T. Everything he said, I just turned my brain off and just did what he said, as opposed to trying to coach myself, which I was doing for the past X amount of years.
Right. Well, you seem to be your own worst enemy. So Yeah, it's
Yeah,
probably a good idea
exactly.
to listen to someone else. But I think, you know, some people need to be distracted when
Yep.
they're because otherwise they start doing kooky, crazy shit and they start sabotaging themselves in a sense. So I think the fact that you were keeping yourself busy doing other stuff unrelated to bodybuilding, because
Yep.
that's the key. Because if you're consumed with bodybuilding and you know you're going to do self-destructive stuff, you don't want to think about bodybuilding all the time because you'll just come
No.
up with stuff that's not going to be good for your well-being. So I think that for your purposes, like you said, because you do destructive things, it almost worked to your advantage to somehow, after the gym, find something else to keep you occupied, so to say.
Yep. I even remember listening to one of your interviews, and you were saying that when you were in a contest prep, you would spend time organizing things a lot. And
Just gonna say
yeah, and
that,
so I
clean
would
the
do that.
house.
I would do that too. Yeah, like me and my wife, we spent time organizing this office and making that look nice, and like
Right.
organizing cupboards, just anything, like you said, just to take your mind off it. It made a huge difference, man. Yeah.
Cleaning and organizing is almost like it's so therapeutic when you're dieting because you can't eat. So it's like, for some reason, it's like it's almost like you get high doing it. I can't even explain to people, why or what the mechanism is. But everyone who does it tells me the same thing. They're like, "Oh, it's so great to clean when you're organized."
No, it's true. And even just making small changes, like I bought like a Nintendo Switch, and so
Right.
whenever I was on cardio, I'd be playing like Pokemon or something like that, just to distract myself, as opposed to previous preps where I would literally be like watching like diners, drive-ins, and dives, and like all just getting myself. Oh, I can't wait to eat after. It's like
Right.
just a total mindset shift.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Did you? I don't know if you ever had any of these dreams because I used to always have when I would diet for show. But you're actually you wake up and you're like, it's almost like a nightmare for a bodybuilder that you were like cheating on the diet. I used to wake up. I used to be in these hotel rooms with buffets, and I'd be eating everything, and I'd be like, why did I do that? I got a show in a week. What am I doing? And I would be so stressed out, and I would wake up like in a sweat. I was like, so happy that I was just dreaming, but it would happen all the time, like especially the last like couple of weeks before the show.
I used to have those dreams more so when I was like food focused, like even
Right.
earlier on. I remember this one time when I was like 18 or 19 and I was prepping, and I woke up and I could smell lasagna. I'm like, where is that lasagna coming from? Like, clearly there was no lasagna. I was just dreaming about food. But
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
this time I had a few dreams where I remember one dream in particular. I was backstage, and I wasn't shaved, and I wasn't ready. I was still like fat on my glutes or something, and I couldn't find my coach. And I'm backstage. I'm like, I gotta go on soon. And they're calling my name. I'm like, I'm not ready for this shit. And that I woke up like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm ready for this show this time.
Yeah, I've had the ones where you show up at the show and you have no color on, right? I'm like,
It was just like,
why didn't I put any protein on, or why didn't I paint any color on? I don't. What's wrong with me? That kind of thing.
like we
But,
spend all this time prepping and doing everything
yeah,
perfectly, and then we forget to put the tan on. It's like,
right,
oh god.
right, right. It's just that's just anxiety dreams, in general.
Yeah.
But it definitely pops up. All right, fourth place, Canada. You have to be super happy with the top five. I mean, you really ostensibly you could have been higher. Some people could have made a case for it. Where do you go from here? What do you need to improve on? What do you need to change to get you to that next level where you're going to be winning these shows?
Comparing myself to the top two, what I could see clearly is that I need to add more size to my quads. I think my legs from the back they're good. I think from the front I need more quad sweep. My upper body needs a little bit more size on the arms, chest, and back. And I think that doing that, I'll be right there and I'll be ready to win a show.
Who weighs the show?
I was about 255.
Okay, so what do you want to bet? About 265?
I think 265 would be perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
5'11.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'11.
Okay, yeah, that's about right. A lot of people don't realize too that you're bringing really good conditioning to the stage. So it's some of these guys will come in 10 pounds heavier, but they're soft. It's not a good quality. You want to put on 10 quality pounds of muscle, and I agree with you. I think that would be exactly what your body probably needs.
Yeah. And even from the beginning, because I was kind of one of the smallest guys, the first time I stepped on stage at 155, I won that show because the thing that I would tell myself every day is I am the most conditioned guy on that stage.
Right. Well, that conditioning win shows. How old are you at this point?
I'm 30.
Okay, so you're still young. Are you going to compete again next year? Are you going to take off a year? What's the goal moving forward?
I'm going to take 3 months or 3 or 4 months to heal. I'm going to do a 12-month, I would say 12-month off season, and then I would prep and get ready for a show most likely later in the year next year.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan to me.
Yeah.
I think you have to be happy that, the way you finished off. I know you coach people on a regular basis, and that's what you do for most of the time, which keeps you entrenched in the sport, immersed, and keeps you interested. Which I always tell people that's good. I wish they had coaching like this when I was competing, because I was kind of doing it online in a sense, but no one really charged at that point. I was kind of writing articles and stuff like that for websites, and but I liked being involved, and so I would be at the gym with people and posing with people. So that even though you're not necessarily on stage yourself, you're kind of living vicariously through the people you're helping, which always helps get you through that long off season to put the size on that you need.
Yeah, it does. And it's also very rewarding when you can help someone achieve their goals too. You kind of, like you were saying, like you still get those same feelings as if you were competing too. Yeah, it's awesome.
Especially now that I'm 55, that's all I can get is the feelings helping other people. But it's all good. Hey, I want to give you a huge congrats, and I want to also just thank you for your radical honesty here, and then really revealing. A lot of people have trouble talking about their past, and especially vulnerabilities. And I think it's important, because I think a lot of us, and I think a lot of bodybuilders have probably gone through similar situations to what you've gone through. And you're a great success story in the sense that you got through it and emerged in a really good place. And I think that you're in a good place also to help people who are in similar situations. So if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way?
The best way is just to find me on Instagram. My Instagram account, Strand Strong. On YouTube, you can search IFBB Pro RobinStrand, or email me at strandstrong@outlook.com. But I do really appreciate that, Dave. And one of my main goals at this point in my career is to be someone that can help others who have faced similar challenges overcome them, because bodybuilders are crazy. And like you said at the beginning, a lot of the reasons why we got into bodybuilding in the first place is because we were dealt traumas, we were dealt with challenges, we were faced with things that caused us to feel less than we were. And when we're faced with things like disease or problems in our life or setbacks and things like that, we go through periods of time when we feel like we're less than we are. But my whole thing now is, if I can open up and talk about my experiences, maybe someone listening who's going through something at this time, they can hear it, they can be inspired, they can realize that they can get through it too, instead of just hearing another story about a bodybuilder who was faced with XYZ and had to back out from the show. And that's why I told myself, no matter what fucking happens on this prep, I'm going to make it to that show. I'm going to show up as my best, so that someone else who's dealing with another similar situation will see that, will feel that, and they'll be able to do it too.
I always say champions find a way. They find a way to get to that stage. Dorian Yates should never have made it to the stage at the 97 Olympia. He had lost like 4 pints of blood. He needed transfusions. He had torn 2 muscles, but he found a way to get there, and he won the Olympia. So, that's because champions find a way. Thank you, RobinStrand. And if anyone wants to get in touch with him, check out his Instagram. For now, we are out of time. I'm Dave Palumbo with RobinStrand for another RX Muscle Spotlight.
Thanks so much, Dave. It was awesome.